places, everybody.
Welcome back to UNSUNG. I'm very glad that you could be here. I have an extremely interesting guest today with a lot of information, a lot of dedication, and just, you know, at least from what I know of her, and I've worked with her a little bit, playing around town, a really giving individual and musician. And so, once again, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Tricia Edwards. Tricia, how the hell are you doing?
I'm great, thanks. How are you, Gavin?
I am good. I am so good. Look, I want to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
Before we get started, because I know that there are things on people's minds, and I should say that you just recently became the, what, Secretary Treasurer? Is that correct?
Yes, the position is called the Secretary-Treasurer, the
Okay.
Calgary Musicians Association. I started on January 4th, so you're right, it's recent, and it's basically the main person in the office for the local.
Right, right. And so I would like to start the questioning with where you were born. Where were you born?
Oh, I was born in London, Ontario. I don't have to say when, do I? Just say what year.
No, as a matter of fact, a lady should never give away her age, now should she? No.
At some point in the past, I was born in London, Ontario.
In London, Ontario. Good for you. I was born in Ottawa.
Okay.
So, yeah, not in a truck either, at a hospital.
Okay.
So given your recent, you know, high-level position here within the city of Calgary, I'm just wondering if you drove yourself here today, or if you had a chauffeur, like by the name of James.
If James drove
Yes.
me here, no, unfortunately, I had to drive myself here.
Oh.
James was busy.
And you're sure about that?
I'm very sure about that. Yeah.
Good. You know, in terms of things that you think and you talk about in the world at large, would you consider yourself a tin hattist, as it were?
Probably not. No.
No? Okay. And you really? Yeah? Okay. Then I'm curious, would you like to wear one for the remainder of this conversation?
No, thanks. It would ruin my hair.
And, okay, well, the only reason I ask is because I have one in the back.
You have one
so,
in the back?
yeah.
You're all set to go.
Okay, so no to conspiracy. Okay. And finally, I mean, on a serious note, Trish, there's a lot of things on people's minds. And, you know, you have taken over a grand position, I suppose, certainly a great responsibility.
That's true.
And so there are things that are on people's mind. And I guess what I'm wondering, and I'm sure everyone out there is wondering, and that simply is, what is your favorite color?
Oh. I think my favorite color is black. Can I say that?
Black?
Yeah, my favorite color is
I think
black.
you could say it. Is black a color, though?
Yeah.
Which one is it? Is it white or black? One of them isn't a color.
I like black.
Okay, black, and you're sure?
I'm very sure.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Okay, well, that's, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
It was a great
Good night.
interview, Gavin.
No.
Thanks. So
No,
happy I
we're-
could be here today.
We're going deep. We're going deep, ladies and gentlemen. We're going deep. So tell me a little bit about London, about growing up. Tell me a little bit about, maybe, when you started to gain this affinity for art, for music.
Well, I was born in London, but we only lived in Ontario till I was about 10. And then we moved to the States, and then to Manitoba, then back to Ontario, then to Calgary, then moved overseas for a couple of years. Sorry, to Edmonton. overseas for a couple of years, back to Edmonton, and then to Calgary. And I would say, unlike a lot of my colleagues, I didn't come from a musical family. It wasn't, and so actually I was a discipline problem in first and second grade, apparently. I
Wait a
don't
minute,
remember.
you?
And so
Wait, you?
so my parents
No.
signed me up for a whole bunch of different lessons,
Right.
and one of them was piano lessons, just because that was the thing to do.
Okay.
And so the ballet lessons didn't take, but but the piano lessons did.
So you were a venerable badass. Is
I
that?
guess so. At
Wow.
7, yeah.
Because I've always known you as like just a fun-loving, church-going.
That's because
you know.
that's because I had the piano lessons, I guess.
So piano changed
It
your life.
worked, yeah. And then it was always something I loved, but I don't think I decided to make it a career until after high school. I did my first year of university at Carleton in journalism, and I missed music so much that I only lasted 1 year in that program and switched into a BMUS program after that.
Interesting. Do you still have an affinity for journalism? Is there any desire there?
Yeah, well, actually, yes. Then I did have a bout with tendonitis for a while and thought, later in my life, thought I was going to have to stop playing. And so I actually went back into, I guess it was my fallback, started in the journalism program at Mount Royal, did one semester, did even less time the second time around. One semester, in the meantime, my hands got better, and I started getting called for gigs again, and so quit. So I've quit journalism twice, but
But you see, because for me, you know, doing this and doing other things that I'm doing, I guess it's later on in my life, but I've found, well, and part of it comes from theater for me, because I did a lot of theater when I was a kid, and I guess I could have gone either way. Excuse me, but any of those disciplines is a lifetime. And so at some point,
Yeah.
you know, you sort of choose, you know, where you're going to hang your hat and, you know, where you're going to go. And I chose, you know, music, drums, and percussion, and a lifetime of study. But in my, like now, in my later epoch, I find myself returning to the younger child in me and pulling out all those things that I also desired. Journalism being one of them. My sister actually went to journalism
okay.
school.
where
And
did she
I
go?
went, huh?
Where did she go?
It would have been in New Brunswick.
Okay.
Yeah, when we lived there. I'm not sure. But, you know, acting and things of this nature are things that I've brought back into the spirit of Gavin. And there is no lack there. I mean, I still play, and I got some gigs coming up. But I've really fallen in love. You know, once again, it's going back to being the dumbest person in the room. And I love the feeling of that, having to learn everything.
Yeah.
And that's what this is.
That's
So
a very valuable experience. And those things never really go away. I think you and I are both at a stage of our life where we realize that lots of your early experiences, they're never wasted. They come back around again. Those opportunities and those passions that you had when you were younger.
they do. And I think this latest span of time, you know, talking about the last 2 years or so, has really, it's been a catalyst, I think, on its own for me in regard to these things. That, you know, I mean, nobody was playing. It was just as simple as that. And I had some people say, you know, you should pick Unsung back up and, excuse me, and start going on that again. And I sat with it and wrestled with it a bit. And then I thought, yeah, they're probably right. And it's been great because I get to sit down with, you know, people like you. I mean, everybody in this city. As much as I desire, and as much as they desire too, to sit down, to talk, just to simply dialogue about the things that matter. So, I gotta go back because I'm a big fan of Europe, so where did you live in Europe?
Oh, no, we lived in the Middle East.
Oh,
we
the
lived
Middle
in
East.
Abu Dhabi.
Really? And what was that experience like?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was right out of school, and I think the country then was just kind of on the verge of flipping over. Like the money had sort of started pouring in. It was starting to change. So there were a lot of expats there from all over the world, which was really wonderful. but there was still something of the old culture and the old way of life was still there. And I would say in lots of ways it formed those experiences, that life experience of being sort of pulled out from everything that was familiar and plopped into something completely new and strange, I think was personality forming those years. Yeah.
Can you define that a little bit better? I'm interested in that.
Just
what do you
sort
mean
of,
by it formed your character? Sorry.
Yeah, well, seeing people from, I don't know where we were going to go here, Gavin. I didn't prepare these answers.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm interested in your life. I mean, that's so interesting that someone would say that they experience something on a cultural level, and that in the shape of character, it formed a certain part of their being. That's very interesting.
Well, definitely one thing was seeing people who were some of the very poorest in our travels and in the place where we lived. You see some of the very poorest people on the planet, but then also the very, very richest. And interacting with both those groups. I mean, we have a range of wealth here in Canada, but it is dramatic, but it's not in the same scope. And so that was just eye-opening and valuable to experience that. To experience being a visible minority was useful. I mean, even though experiencing being a visible minority as a white person is different. It's not the same. But just having that experience regularly was very valuable. It was compassion generating. Meeting people from all over the world, there were also at that time, I would call them white collar refugees, people who had, not dissimilarly from Ukraine, people who had a very sort of middle class, stable life in the country that they lived in. And then their country, for whatever reason, fell apart and they had to leave behind. I mean, there's so many tragic stories, had to leave behind everything, had to leave behind family, lost people, and then were kind of rebuilding their lives there because it was at that time, probably an easier place to get into with, certain job skills. So, yeah, it just broadened my perspective of the whole world.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, that last statement, very true. Right? Is the observance of that really did something to you. And that's quite astounding. So would you say that when you came out of that experience, and maybe as you look back on it, would you say that it shaped a benevolent sort of understanding in you about how the world works, or a greater love for
yeah, definitely.
humankind?
And I think where you might be going with this is, so obviously the local, its job is justice.
Oh, I wasn't going there.
Oh, okay. Its job is justice for our segment of, our population, which is musicians. And so I would say that, I look all the way back to all those years ago, I would say I have a passion for justice, for seeing people be well treated and treated fairly. And so that has not left me since that time. And so I would say that what I'm doing now, even this sort of career shift that I had, although I'm still playing, I'll never stop playing, but it fueled that definitely too.
Yeah. Well, and seeing as you went there, girlfriend, I will let me pick up on that. Because whether or not I can say that a certain level of that was missing prior to your engagement with the union, I mean, it seems like that's a good thing to have. It seems like that's a good, what would you call that, quality that a person has. To be able to, number one, observe suffering and to be able to react to suffering. I think that's very valuable. I think that is what unions and individuals are all about. We won't labor on this, but I think right now, there is some suffrage that we do and are observing. And so I think that benevolence that you have and that understanding that you have is very important to
Well, and I don't
your
think
position.
that anyone, like no one person and no one organization can do it, right? That's impossible. But I do believe, and I know it sounds naive, but I do believe that each person in each organization has a responsibility for their little piece, for doing their little piece of it. And so I was on the board of the local for 6 years. So got good experience and learned lots of things. And I have to say, then COVID, I think, as you and I talked before this, it was difficult and it was tragic for many. But it did have this way of sort of sharpening your focus, right? With going, okay, now what's next? And so the position was going to be coming open. And so I did feel strongly that was the next thing that was my little piece. That was the thing I was being asked to do. Because I understood it and I saw that as important, and I have no illusions that the locals can fix everything for musicians, but it does have a role to play, definitely, going forward. I mean, we both knew and loved Keith Smith.
Oh my God, yes.
Favorite person for both of us, and he would say, well, yeah, I forget the exact quote, the issues with the local, the issues with the union, but it's the best thing we've got. And I also, Winston Churchill, democracy is the worst system of government except for all the others. So,
Right.
So there is a mandate for the office to do things for musicians in the city who have suffered a lot, gone through a lot these last 2 years. And so I think some community building and helping each other out. It's time.
I think it is time. And the only problem with anything I have that you just said is the fact that you prefaced it with that it might sound romantic. I don't think it does sound romantic. I think it's honest. I think it's really just honest. And once again, that's why this show exists, is for honesty. Dare I say the word truth. That's why I want to hear from so many people, from everybody. And like you're saying, about your desire, or that pulling towards being part of the union, has more to do about calling even than career. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. Yes, because like Gavin, I have to do spreadsheets, and I really hate math and spreadsheets. Really hate it. But I think the path to making things better is sometimes through a spreadsheet. So suck it up, princess.
I've never
Figure it
heard. Man, I wonder if they could solve the world's problems that way.
With a spreadsheet.
I mean, that was just, I don't know how to feel about that statement, but perhaps, yes. And I think if what you're saying is, you need to know, you need to have the stats, right? You need to understand it from that perspective. And I know, that I've been carefully admonished, about the perceptions that I have about the union, as opposed to the reality of the union. And that's why I think it's invaluable for you and I to sit here and talk. It's really too bad that the union can't solve all my problems.
Sorry.
I'm very sad about that.
So you're gonna pay your mortgage and
Well, no, I was looking for a Lamborghini.
the Lamborghini.
Yeah. No chance.
No,
No.
sorry.
Okay.
I'll tell you, I had to drive myself here, right?
Yeah, well, sure enough, you did. So in terms of the union, I brought some things. I wanted to ask you a few questions.
Oh, sure.
Can I ask you a few questions?
Well, I'm still new on the job, so I'll do my best.
Okay.
I might not know the answer to every question.
Or from my time in Baton Rouge, can I ask you a question?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. The union is dedicated to establishing and maintaining professional standards, ethics, and fees in the music industry.
Check.
Okay. In addition to providing collective strength to establish and maintain these standards, we work with and for our members to provide a host of services and benefits useful in their careers.
Check.
Yeah. Can you explain that, though? That's an overview.
Right.
Can
So-
you maybe define that?
Well, so I am new in the job, but not only am I new in the job, but there's also an entirely new board. And we're actually, your questions are timely because we're meeting this Saturday for a half day of strategic planning. We are actually going to go through that mission statement, point by point, and talk about what parts of those are we doing currently well right now. So the rose and the thorn, right? What parts are working of each of those aspects of the mission statement? Let's re-examine it. And for our 2-year terms, what parts of that mission statement are we doing well? And we want to lean into those things. I know lean in, overused, but we want to lean into those things. And what parts, do we need to perhaps reinvigorate post-COVID and do those things better?
Somewhat serendipitous, isn't it, that I'm asking you
yes,
this?
Yes, so now you need to interview me again
and
after the strategic planning meeting, and then we'll have good answers.
We're coming back. A check mark for Gavin, I guess. Okay, so that's fabulous. And so the union is dedicated to establishing and maintaining professional standards, ethics and fees in the music industry. And so that's just
well, the old cliche is our rising tide floats all boats, right? So even people in the periphery or aren't directly involved, if there's something sort of pushing, the default is not that the standards are going to go up. That's not a default position. The default is that things fall down, right? So if there's some organization that is sort of continually, pushing back, no, let's keep this to a certain level, then that helps everybody, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
We're not, of course, the local wants people to become members, but we're not just there for the members.
Right. Which I think, if we can pause on that statement for a second, the concept of the union began for the sake of the people. We see that coming back in droves now. We see that with Starbucks. We see that with Amazon. Of course, they're fighting tooth and nail, but I'm glad the people are winning.
So we didn't want little 6-year-olds crawling around in mines and in cotton mills.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, that's why I had kids, but no, it was just to cut the grass and do the dishes. No, I love them, and they know that. These sorts of things are for the people. The union was established for the people. Now, there would seem to be a fair assumption that the union, in the last epoch of time, however long or short that's been, has perhaps suffered in some ways in terms of civic involvement from the people themselves. In talking to some of the members from the Calgary Union, they've said that the music unions in the States are tanking, that they just can't keep people. That there is no necessary place for or need of a union for the musicians themselves. I would assume, and this is where I could be wrong, so I'll take this as a pure assumption, but it could be because the paradigm or the way in which we do music now is not necessarily in line with the reason the union was established to begin with. So the union, in a sense, was kind of like it was just a way for people to fairly and equitably get paid and use the services, but those services, more or less, were attached to the unions themselves, and that's how it worked. Am I correct? Is that a fair assumption?
Well, I think so. Yeah, definitely. Musicians are unique. I mean, we're not plumbers. People don't need us in the same way. And I think definitely the paradigm of our industry has shifted. But I also think, like every organization of every kind has to keep re-examining itself. Why are we here? What are we doing? What's our purpose? Are we building community in this space that we've been given with these people? So, again, might sound naive or romantic, but I think it's still the job. It's still the job, even though, and it should change. It has to change. Of course, it has to change. Not just in the last 20 years, but post-COVID, everything's changed. So, is there a job still going forward for musicians to gather together and act collectively as a group, as a community? Of course there is. What exactly it's going to look like, I think we have to keep asking the question. We have to keep looking at those goals.
Well, yes,
the
but
reasons
don't you?
for existing.
Yes, but don't you think that the people themselves? See, this is where I think. I hate to maybe put it this way, but industry and population, or the people, are disconnected. And that is that the people think it's the industry's job, and the industry maybe will run with it as far as they can and do what they do and make what they can for a certain number of people that fall into the mission statement that they have set forth. Right.
Yeah.
And yet the population itself stands without. However, there is a voice of the majority here that I think has a responsibility of each and every one of us, I think, to be a part of the conversation. So it's not just about, can you take care of me? It's
Yes.
about, how can we take care of us?
Right. Exactly.
Is that okay?
Preach, Gavin.
Thank you.
Why
Thank
don't you take the job?
Sing it again, John. Sing it again. I work with
I had
Jimmy
more time to
Swagger.
practice if you had taken it.
I work with Jimmy Swagger.
Okay.
And not that I'm bragging about such a thing. But he was a great preacher.
The interesting thing is that you bring up, that's really important. And that's why we had the new board and I, we had those 2 town halls, and you came to one of them. And the point of those was we just need to listen. We're new, we're all new to these jobs, we're figuring them out. And so the most important thing to do right now is to listen. And I've been meeting with people for coffee, trying to, once or twice a week, someone new, and, just tell me that we can't necessarily promise that this organization, it's this organization's job to fix all those things, but it might be some of them, and so you're not going to know until you listen.
That's very true. That's very true. It's one thing to talk.
We're all very good at talking.
Well, and not only that, but talking it can become deflection. I mean, if you just keep
Yes.
talking and nobody can question you because nobody,
Exactly.
word
Yes.
edgewise, then then assumptions start to be made, right?
Whereas if you're listening, you're suddenly accountable for all the things that other person said to you, which is a
Right.
scary place
which
to
is
be,
a,
right?
which is a scary place, but a fantastic place at the same time to be. And that's why, man, I want to stop on this for a minute, because I really feel that, I'm so glad you said that, because I think you and I are in total agreement as far as this is concerned. And I think that people do need to re-engage. I think that the concerns over the last couple of years especially have brought to mind just how short and how valuable perhaps our time is here. And the fact that whether we want to admit it or not, we do have a voice. Even in terms of Amazon, there's no conspiracy here, this is just the truth of what's happened. But Amazon spent millions trying to shut down the people looking to unionize, and the people spent, far less because they weren't making anything from Amazon, and they won. And to me, that is a direct example of how people can change something. And I think, and they didn't do it violently, they didn't do it incorrectly, they did it judiciously, they did it through process, and it worked. And that's what I'm all about. As you've said, about the second town hall coming out, of which I want to be a part. And ladies and gentlemen, I would love it. And I don't do this on behalf of the union. I do this on behalf of our conversation right now, stating that there is an onus on industries and people that are presenting themselves. But I think it's our responsibility, too, to sit down to see what they have to say. And to give input in a benevolent way, in a caring way, in a way that has all of us in mind. I also am proposing a town hall, but a live event where we can all get together and we can discuss, even if it starts with people bitching and complaining a little bit. I'm okay with that bit of emotion.
Yeah, definitely. Because there needs to be a venting.
Absolutely, because
we're all very frustrated by the last 2.5 years.
Right,
You're allowed to.
Right, and even in terms of the union and beyond the union, the other establishments which work and don't work and try to work and yet don't, I think there is some frustration. There is some emotion about that. Now, emotions are the shittiest way to solve problems, but they are real. And I think to not hear them is to do an injustice. Once that's satisfied, once that's laid down.
The difficulty is if you're stuck in the bitching, right?
That's the, yeah.
You start there, but if you get stuck there, that doesn't...
Absolutely. You know, Rob Maciak Rob Maciak, I should pronounce his name correctly, and I were...
In case he's watching.
Yeah, I know. What the hell is he butchering my name, son of a bitch. Sorokin. Him and I were talking, and so I brought up the emotional side of it, and he said, well, you know, yeah, but you can't stay that. And I totally agree. You can't, but without that emotion, I don't know that you're giving people the respect of their emotions, to feel something, at least for a moment. Now, the reason that something would exist is to ultimately solve a problem. That's what people do. That's what people are good at. And it is my desire that people would get to that point. I don't know how it's going to go, and I have no illusions as to how it would end up. And people walk away disappointed, or, you know, same shit, different day. Or that people say, you know what, yeah, we're ready to open up dialogue. And we don't care who it's with. You know, we don't care what that person thinks or what that person thinks. We're all in this together. And, man, I think that's the most valuable thing at this moment.
I know, I think the conversation is important. Because then we know what... So the local doesn't have all the solutions. It can't possibly. But other organizations in the city perhaps do have solutions that we wouldn't. And so my hope is that over the next, you know, I have a 2-year term here, that we have conversations and then we kind of know, well, so we can't help you, but because we talked to these other people, they can help you. Or, you know, someone's talking to them, well, we can't help you, but there is, so that it is in building community and talking.
Yeah.
That that you can find solutions rather than siloing ourselves off and being territorial, which is easy.
It is easy, and I think in some ways in this geography, and you know, I've said this before, and I do not mean this to shit on the place, but there is, as far as my observance goes, there has been a certain disconnect between, it seems like our music scene and our art scene have been fractioned into different spheres of, you know, these guys are jazz guys and these guys are country guys. It's funny because if you ask a country guy, you know, about me, country guy will say, oh, he's a jazz guy. And if you ask the jazz guys about me, they'll say, oh, he's a country guy.
Yeah.
Oh, Gavin, the country. And neither one of those things are
I
true.
describe myself as a pianist who's jazz adjacent. Like,
Right.
It's hard for me to say I'm a jazz pianist because I'm not really sure I am. But I like to sit next to them, so.
And I feel the
jazz adjacent, but
yeah.
I would
Oh
never
my God.
want to assume the title of.
Yeah, like John McCaslin, I don't get close to what John does, and I'm okay with that. I love what John does. I mean, I think there's a mutual respect there for what I do versus what he does. But we respect each other on that level, and that's what I experienced when I lived in the States. When I worked with Jimmy, I found a place that accepted what I did. I didn't have to be this, that, or the other thing. I just had to be good. And they gave me the opportunity to learn. I mean, I ended up doing over 100 records when I lived there. And starting with my first. And my first was a major artist from Nashville at the time. And, you know, I really shit the bed on that record. And he really didn't want to have me back because I overplayed.
Oh.
But when I come back, you know, when I came back here, I felt a disconnect that I had not observed previously in my spirit, in you know what I mean, in the spirit of the city. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I sit here and talk to people today, because everybody I've ever talked to, whether I thought they were one of those, you know, pulling at the fabric or not, when I sit with them, they're all amazing.
Right.
They're all just real people.
Yeah. It changes everything when you have a one-on-one conversation with someone.
It really does. Yeah. I mean, the mask, if it doesn't come off, at least it gets down to like there, you know? And it's great to see people for who they are. I mean, for their humanity in that sense. And not for their celebrity or what they're supposed to be. That's why I want to do this, because I think we're lacking that sense of our humanity. And now it is my responsibility and your responsibility and Tricia's responsibility and the entire industry in Calgary to get together and to work together and to provide the most curated, best, amazing performances and shows, that we can produce.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not getting any arguments here, and that's making me more nervous than anything.
I completely agree.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm going back to my notes.
Oh, okay.
Because I got to find something we can argue about. In addition to providing collective strength to establish and maintain these standards, we work with and for our members to provide a host of services and benefits useful in their careers. In addition, collective strength to establish and maintain these standards, we work with and for our members to provide a host of services and benefits. Right. So maybe in respect to this, is the union looking to just proliferate that, to broaden what that means to...
Well, frankly, I think there's some things on our list right now that we could do better. So again, that's something that that we're going to be talking about going forward. What is the president, what did they give him, like the first 60 days or something? I need more time than that. There's some things on there that I think we could be doing, that we say we offer, I think we could be doing better. And then, maybe there's some things on the list that frankly aren't that helpful to people anymore.
Perhaps they're antiquated.
And maybe there's things we need to add. So I think we do need to clarify our vision as to what exactly the benefits are, and then, live up to the promise.
And you do have some bright minds that you're working with.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you feel confident with the people you
I
have
do.
around you these days?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. Very confident. Gotten to know, didn't know most of them before January, and have gotten to know them. We've been meeting as a group and one-on-one, and have gotten to know them, and I'm very confident. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Good energy, and we have, as a group, we have good energy. So.
The smile on your face makes me believe you're genuine. And that's a good thing, man. I mean, because, as much as we sense, that whether it's the union or other, like I said, factions and things throughout the city can be doing a better job, it's also quite daunting to undertake this sort of task, I would think.
Right, because the music scene in our city is so broad. Like, oh my goodness, I don't think on our board we represent enough breadth, maybe, of the different scenes, but we're working at looking, turning around and looking out. When you look at all the different, ages and genres of music and venues played in, and how do you represent all those people equally well? It's a monstrous task. But.
And I'll put this down for a second, because, the one thing that I would love to see, and I'm getting a romantic now, but that's okay.
It's
a
your
thought.
podcast.
It's
your podcast.
I can do whatever the hell I
Yeah.
want. Yeah. I can put the Bahamas behind me. We're certainly not there today, are we? This might sound romantic, but I'd love to bring other disciplines together, like really provide a space where music can work with dance, and I know that exists to a certain extent, but music with theater, and that also happens to a certain extent. But really, bring these creations together. There are industry individuals that are doing that outside of the scope of maybe the civicness of our scene. But wow, what if we could provide those things for the people within this city, because we're so vibrant, because we're so connected, because we're so alive. I know that sounds romantic, but it's an honest feeling that I have, and every time I speak it, I smile. Every time I speak it, I get excited. And so I can't help but romanticize that notion.
Right.
And although it's not today, and it may not be tomorrow, it's that world that you create, that utopia, that yes, still has its problems and still has things that it needs to work out. And also I should mention that in terms of my town hall, the one thing that I want is everyone to come out. Every individual that plays music, dances, sings, does whatever. And one of the things I want to pose is a thought experiment, a romantic thought experiment, where there are no wrong answers. Now, of course, we'll understand that these don't exist in reality, but in our consciousness, we can project that sort of thing onto each other, and for no other reason than to give us all hope, excuse me, to make us smile,
Right.
if just for a moment. And out of those dreams, because everybody's got them individually, and we've done a great job of being individual, of being very individualistic. I think we've nailed the corner of the market on that shit. But I don't think we've done a great job of collectivizing.
Right.
As much as we can. So this is just some background because I was interested, and perhaps the people are interested. Founded in 1896, the American Federation of Musicians of the United States and Canada, which I wasn't aware of. I didn't know it was both together. Is the largest organization in the world dedicated to representing the interests of professional musicians. With more than 80,000 members, the AFM represents all types of professional musicians, including those who record music for sound recordings, film scores, video games, radio, television, and commercial announcements, as well as perform music of every genre in every sort of venue, from small jazz clubs to symphony orchestra halls to major stadiums. So, yeah, I mean, that kind of speaks for itself, but it's really a big umbrella.
Yeah, so I think if I think too much about the big umbrella, that's sort of overwhelming. So at this point in time, I'm very focused on Southern Alberta, Calgary.
I think that's
Baby
very
steps.
wise.
Baby steps.
I think that's very wise, though. You know, and this show is not necessarily, doesn't exist, you know, to just blow smoke up people's, you know, what's it. But that to me seems very, what's the word, very...
It's not that the other isn't important. Obviously, we need the Canadian umbrella, the American umbrella. We need, those are important. It's just for me right now, it's about the local scene.
Well, you know, I harken back to my Christian days. And
You have to
I do harken back. Oh, yeah, no, not quite there anymore. I was enlightened. And yet, you know, I still leave a wide swath for those sorts of things. But, you know, I am reminded that if you are faithful in the little, you will be granted much.
Yes.
And that is a very wise position, I think, to take, especially with where we're at, especially our city, especially at this moment. I think that's very wise to say, hey, we're paring it back, man.
Other people are doing that job.
Yeah.
So there are people doing, like, very skilled people, and that's the thing that they're supposed to do right now. So it's not saying that's definitely important. That's how we got served, was, you know, is people lobbying on behalf, people at the national level lobbying on behalf of us here in Calgary. So that work is important. For me right now, right here, it's the local scene. As you get to know the organization of the people who, you know, they have these different jobs within the larger organization, and you know, the cool stuff they're doing, the important stuff they're doing, and me just realizing, well, they're doing that, and that's important, and for me right now, this is what's important. So there's only a certain number of hours in the day. Yeah. Right.
And I'll tell you right now, I mean, you know, I extend, you know, anything that I can do for the furtherance of that, because I think that's right. I think it's just simply correct to, like I said, you know, if you're faithful in little, you'll be granted much. And to me, that's the romanticism of, you know, no, let's go after the big before we've actually created a foundation.
Right.
You know, to be able to springboard to that. I can say, the union ain't doing shit. They don't care about anybody. They don't care about me. They only care about themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I can certainly be, I guess, justified in myself. You know, or I can, you know what I mean? I can falsely justify these things to myself, and I can understand the psychology of it. But sitting here dialoguing with you, and you going, you know, you telling me that as the head of something as important as the music union, that you saying, look, man, we got to take this back to grassroots. You know, we got to take this back to the foundation. Because I've been thinking about that lately. Like, whenever I progressed in something musically, you know, whether I was learning a five, you know, how to break down fives or sevens or these sorts of things, I found that if I couldn't do a thing, it usually came back to my foundation, the way I was holding my sticks, the way I wasn't relaxed. Those are all very foundational.
Right.
So when I tried to go above and beyond things, it always knocked me back down to the foundation. That doesn't mean, that only means that it shone light on the cracks. And I really think that that's what you're saying to me.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you talk about paralleling it to playing, because I find I do that as a teacher too. When a student is struggling with something, I'm sure you've had this experience. You pull them right back to some beginning concept, and they generally resent it.
But it's glaring at you, isn't it?
But it's when you come, no, let's go back to this other thing, and then let's work forward through it, and that's how you solve the problem. And then over time, when you have a student, they start to trust you, right? So that, no, I'm not saying you're dumb or there's something you don't understand, but I really, in order to fix this thing, we have to go backwards.
And don't you find, because I know exactly what you're talking about, don't you find that when you're sitting there, it's just glaringly apparent to you? You know what I mean? Like because I know I've had students and they're pooping the bed on a thing, but I can totally see that it's the way they're holding the sticks, their grip. The fact that they're not loose. These simple foundational things that once they work that out, then all of a sudden they're flying.
Yes.
And then they don't know it, but then they reach a little higher, they go back down to the foundation because, man, now I even need to be more relaxed. And yeah, to us, it's glaringly apparent.
But then we make the same with the blind spot is when you're working on something yourself, you forget that.
Well, you do, but
what is the thing that I do as a teacher? Oh, I need to do that for my own self now.
Right, but it does take us longer because we're stubborn, just as our students would be, if they had no. And that's that's another thing about being a teacher is that you learn how to be a teacher to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
you learn how to
and
teach
so
yourself.
and so typically that awareness and acceptance of having to go back comes quicker.
Yes.
Right? Because now you can just tell yourself, oh shit, I need to go back there. I need to go back to that place. And really, in a sense, I feel that that's what you're saying about this. And that's what gives me hope. I mean, as an individual, as a civic musician, and partner with all the other players and individuals, I want to hold the union accountable for certain things. But I also think that people need to engage. That they need to be a part of that thing that they may want to complain about. And if it is possible that today is a new day, that they're actually going to be heard. Not that things are going to get fixed overnight. That's not what I'm saying.
No, I have no illusions about fixing things, and also have no illusions about everyone being happy with me. Like, there's things I'm good at, and there's things I'm not good at. So the only thing I'm saying is I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do my best. But am I going to drop the ball? Most likely. Am I going to forget something I should know or mess up a spreadsheet? Most likely.
Okay, wait a minute. So what you're telling me is that Tricia is saying she's not perfect.
It's not going to be perfect.
Yeah, that's an X right there.
Which is why you need it. Which is why you need a community, right? You need the community to keep you accountable for the things you can't do.
You do, and I think you also need to hear from the community. Remember when you and I talked a couple months back, kind of the first time that we spoke, and I said, Tricia, because you said, Gavin, I can't do it all alone. And I said, I know you can. That's why we're having a conversation, because I want to help you any way I can. And I really meant that, and I still do mean it. Just
Thanks,
so you know.
Kevin.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I don't know what that
You
looks
all heard
like.
him say that, right? Yeah.
Shit. I'm going to have to edit that.
It's on camera.
I'm going to have to edit that. Thank God I'm in control.
Maybe I'll say it again. Gavin said he was going to help in any way possible. Let's make it more difficult to edit.
That's right. All I need is a Lamborghini to do it. No, I do want to help where I can, where I feel my strengths are needed. I am great at delegating because I know very well what I'm not good at. And so delegation has always been a strength, I think, of mine because I think it's important that you know what you're good at and that you continue to learn that, and that you know what you're not good at and that you're actually going to perhaps ruin a thing. This is a good place to stop, because I would like to have you back, especially in terms of what you've been speaking about, this meeting you're having with the board. this weekend.
After.
So I would like to talk to you after at some point.
Well, maybe we could do the 6-month check-in, you know, the first part of the term in office, where are things standing?
I think that's a hell of an idea.
That's the accountability thing coming into play.
Right? And I think the other thing, you know, now that I mention it, I think a good interim thing would be a town hall. I am adamant to all of us that when this town hall arises, whether it's the unions or the one that I'm proposing, that you all take a pause, a moment, to think maybe this might be vital. Maybe it's important. And I'm convinced it is. So I want to thank you, and I'm good. Anything?
Well, thank you, Gavin. Thank you, Gavin, for having me, and thank you, everyone in YouTube land and Facebook, for watching us. It was so great to come and talk today, and yeah, call the office, anyone. I'll take you for coffee. Just want to go have a chat. I'm open to it. Yeah,
That's
again.
nice.
It's been a great interview.
Yeah. That's nice. I hope you got like a business credit card for the coffee, because
Yeah. So
you might
far,
be taking
so
100 at a
So
time.
far, I'm in the bounds of it, but
No, that's fabulous. I mean, that's really great. That's all I could have hoped for from this. And ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for joining us today. You've taken up your time to listen. And I'm coming back at you with another one next week, and for many more weeks to come, until we sit down and we all start dialoguing like this. So thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.
should I call James now to come and
Yes.
pick me up? Is it time?
Oh, yeah, sorry, Tricia, we're ready to go.